Hello, everyone. Welcome to A Million Little Perspective, episode
Hello.
9 of season 1. The title is, it's funny, Perspective, written by DJ Nash.
Is it actually called Perspective?
Yeah, it is. Directed by Chris Koch. And this is the episode 1. The next episode, episode 10, is the winter finale, but we won't worry about finales. It's a bigger episode, but we'll just keep
This is
uploading.
A finale?
What?
When's the finale?
The finale is the season 1 finale is episode 17, titled Goodbye. But yeah, let's dive into Perspective. It's written by our favorite producer.
You're a DJ and writer in the world.
Yep. Directed by Chris Koch. And the episode opens up prior to John's death, and also prior to Gary getting his chemo, where Gary tells his 3 friends about the fact that he has breast cancer. And this episode has multiple flashbacks exploring the difficulties Gary went through while he had chemo, basically. Gary obviously had to get chemo before getting the tumor out of his chest, basically. And the one main person that always came to visit Gary was John. Yes, our good friend John.
Let's go to John.
Yes, I think I would do the same, visiting my friends if they're going through a hard time.
You'd visit me?
Yes, most likely. If we're in the same country. During COVID, I probably won't be able to come, but if you're in the same country, yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah. Gary and John, play. Well, Gary's basically complaining about thinking that he's going to die instead of being positive, and John is the light in the situation where John cheers Gary up by being there for him, basically. And Gary and in the end, John gives him a painting so that because the way he was facing, the wall is blank, white wall, nothing on it. Yeah, I would get bored if I'm staring at a white wall for like every day. But so John buys a painting and places it there so that Gary has something else to see instead of this blank white wall, which is a nice gesture. And Gary does recover from does recover after getting enough chemo. The tumor shrinks and they're able to cut it out of him, basically. Nice. And the painting's going to be very the painting's going to be very important in the end of the episode. But basically, Gary, after he recovers, or during his recovery, obviously Gary is bald because of chemo. Right. Bald, yeah. And John also visits Gary at his apartment playing video games so that he's not alone and he can be in company together, which is not many people would do that for people unless you're really close to. And it really does show Gary and John's brotherhood in this episode of how close they were towards each other, more than the other 2 guys. Even though they're all close to each other, Gary and John was really close
to each other.
Yeah. And Gary is it shows Gary's hardship through chemo and his treatment. And meanwhile, in this episode, we learn a little bit more about, or we learn more about Eddie's backstory about being in the band, basically. We Previous episode, the reason why Eddie stopped drinking or is sober is because he wanted to be there for Theo, but the reason
Right.
he was drinking was also because he was in a band, and it it kept him in a nice mood to sing, basically.
It helped
And
him overcome his stage
yeah,
fright.
stage fright. Yeah,
Yeah.
basically, I get stage fright too. My hand shakes, and I'm nervous, and my legs are stiff
Well,
during my choir times. Yeah, but we don't have to talk about that anymore. One of Eddie's band member or former band member requests Eddie to join him on a tour, um, just for this once, because you know Ed, um, Eddie, the band doesn't have a singer anymore, and Eddie is the perfect singer, and the band has heard of Eddie's singing in the bar, or the bar
all right.
thing. Yeah, the
Yeah.
unexpected, the song, and Eddie has this comprehension of whether or not to go to go with them, basically. Eddie also has to deal with the fact that Catherine doesn't want Theo to be with Eddie, basically. So Catherine's now asking her coworker to watch after Theo instead of asking Eddie, and tensions between them get a little bit more higher. And because of this, Eddie decides in the end of the episode to screw it and
No.
go on the band.
Wait, but does he start though?
What? Go on the
Does he
tour.
start drinking?
Oh no, he's not gonna start drinking. He's just
Okay.
gonna go and have fun touring. Um, you know,
Right.
Obviously, um, the others will be doing drugs and other stuff, but Eddie's this is going to be Eddie's challenge on how he's going to manage being sober and um, yeah, sober. So, but Eddie decides he wants to do it, and he decides to go for it. Basically, um, this episode has a lot of things happening that I think that's why DJ directed this episode. But um, and the in the other side, um, Maggie and Delilah goes on a road trip. Maggie has to do this lecture at at a school, at a university, and Delilah volunteers to go with her, and uh, Delilah and Maggie talks about Gary because Gary had these outbursts last episode, and Gary and Maggie, Delilah and Maggie talked about Gary and other stuff and about chemo, and Maggie decides to Maggie and Delilah, go on this road trip basically, and that's it for them. It's a small arc, but it's a nice arc, I think, of how at the beginning of the episode or the season they were strangers, but now we go on
Now
road
they're
trips and
best
they're
friends.
very close.
Oh, okay. That's
Yeah,
sweet.
I know. And this is another big episode, just like episode 6, where Regina found out about Rome's depression. This time, his father finds out about Rome's
Oh,
depression. Yeah,
right.
and um, Rome has to talk to um, his father about how he feels trapped, and the meds that he's been taking has actually been helping him, and it's really hard for his father to
To
comprehend.
hear that.
Yeah, to hear that his son has depression, because that's not something you want your child to have. But
Anyone
basically,
to have. Yeah.
and by I guess Rome and his father ends in a middle term where instead of working things out, the father walks out and nothing happens basically. But
Really?
he does find out. Yeah, he has this small talk about Rome has this small talk, but his father has nothing to say about his depression, and he just walks away instead of starting a semi-fight thing, basically. And yeah, and then meanwhile, at the end of the episode, Gary, it's been a year. The basically, um, the reason why the cancer flashbacks happened was because it was Gary's 1 year cancer free anniversary basically.
Right.
So the whole gang is here celebrating, but when Gary sees the um but Maggie's there too, so he's got this from the last episode of Outburst. Gary's does become does start losing it, and in the end he basically destroys the painting that John gave him, or placed in the hospital, on the oncology wards, hospital thing, and it starts and really does break down about how much he misses John, because John
Oh,
was the closest thing he had to a brother, and John is gone. So Gary finally admits how much he misses John, and yeah, and Gary finally become more accepting of John's death by the end of the episode, which is
that's
really
nice.
sweet, I think. And then by the end of the episode, um, we see Maggie, because of this outburst that Gary gave. I think is one of the reasons starts getting chemo, and it's just a tease of how Maggie has learned how uh learn how much closely she has become to this group, and the fact that she sees Gary loses control because of John's death. Maggie starts accepting that not getting treatment isn't her choice anymore. It's everyone else. It's hers and also others. So
Oh,
Maggie does decide to get chemo, but
that's a
she
good
does
one.
keep it a secret, so no one else
Why?
in the group knows. But it's just a teaser for next week's episode, with next episode, which is the Christmas episode. I know
Yay,
it's
Christmas.
February, but we're gonna be talking about Christmas next time, so be prepared. Or Christmas is a fun time, so should be nice. Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, overall, this episode was Gary's episode and Eddie's. Slightly, Eddie has always a part in the episode, but this episode was mainly Gary's, with him with coming to terms with John's death and his 1 year anniversary of cancer free, and someone who's um who likes to joke a lot, shows his emotions a lot in this episode, and it's a great episode that DJ directed, in my opinion.
Yeah, it was really nice to actually
Yeah,
show the interaction between Eddie.
yeah,
That was really sweet. Oh, and I also like that she's getting chemo now.
yeah. Me too.
Yeah, that was a big part of yeah. I like that. I like that.
Well, thank you for listening, listeners. Please spread this podcast. We've hit 100, but we want a 200, maybe 1,000. So please do
10,000.
share it. My co-host wants a 50,000, but let's hope that happens in a year of this podcast. But we'll probably have to wait until then. But yeah, thank you for listening. We'll see you next time for another podcast, I guess.
See ya. Bye.